In the gleaming tower of Forrester Creations, where sunlight danced on steel and glass, Eric Forrester lay prone upon a crisp white bed, his breathing shallow, his skin pale as porcelain. The entire company held its collective breath, for Eric was the heart of their world, the visionary patriarch whose very presence sustained the Forrester legacy. But this was a carefully orchestrated illusion. An elaborate ruse conceived by the man himself to force his son Ridge to do what Eric believed necessary, marry Brooke Logan before Eric's final breath could steal her away forever. Ridge, torn between two loves, had finally, at Eric's insistent urging, given in to the plan, agreeing to wed Brooke in a private ceremony within the stately boardroom, where white roses and candlesticks stood vigil like silent sentinels. He had done so out of love for his father, out of duty, and out of a longing to protect the company from the scandal of a broken engagement. As Ridge slid the ring onto Brooke's trembling finger, Brooke's eyes glistened with a mixture of joy, relief, and something darker, guilt. They both believed Eric would breathe his last the very next morning, and neither dared reveal the maw of doubt gnawing at their hearts. But Taylor Hayes, Ridge's eternally devoted spouse, refused to stand idly by and let her family, and her love, be torn apart by an apparent deathbed scenario that reeked of impropriety. Called to the hospital by an anonymous tip, one sent, rumor insisted, by her own cautious instincts, Taylor strode determinately into Eric's suite, her surgical mask hanging forgotten at her side. She demanded to see his medical records. She would not lose Ridge again, not to Brooke, not to any scheme, no matter how noble Eric's intentions might appear. Her dark hair framed her face like a cloud of doubt as she glared down at Eric's feeble form. Ridge, caught between filial obedience and the terror of losing his first true love, stood at the foot of the bed, torn. He tried to placate Taylor with murmured assurances that Eric was indeed at death's door, but Taylor pressed on, insisting that the law required full disclosure of any patient's condition to their closest kin. Eric, eyes twinkling with a secret mischief that belied his weakened state, shook his head. He told Taylor simply, "Not yet. Let this moment be sacred." And Taylor, who had seen the cunning in Eric's smile before, felt the first stirrings of suspicion. She reached for his chart, only to have Eric's hand clamp over hers, his voice suddenly gaining strength as he whispered, "Trust me, Taylor. I only want what's best for this family." Behind the scenes, in a sterile laboratory turned makeshift office, the young Dr. Finn, Taylor's stepson by marriage, Dr. John Finn Finnegan, sat before a stack of digital files on a laptop screen, the hospital's logo glowing in the corner. Eric had summoned him privately, explaining in hushed tones that the real medical reports painted a far grimmer picture. Eric's heart was fine, his lungs strong, and his prognosis excellent. If the truth came out, Taylor would stop the wedding, Ridge would reconsider his vow, Brooke would be heartbroken, and the company's future would once again hang in the balance, washed away by a tempest of broken promises and bitter lawsuits. So Eric had asked Finn to doctor the medical records. Modify lab results, adjust imaging reports, insert fabricated notes about progressive organ decline, and stamp them with the hospital's official seal. In return, Eric offered Finn unlimited access to the company's charitable foundation, guaranteeing him a place in the Forrester dynasty, a tempting prize for any ambitious young man. Now Finn sat at the cusp of a moral chasm. On one side, his loyalty to his mentor, Dr. Eric Forrester, and the future he promised. On the other, his duty to the truth, to his own conscience, and to the woman he loved, Taylor Hayes, who trusted him implicitly. As he stared at the screen, his fingers hovered over the keyboard. In the hallway outside, voices raised in heated argument reached his ears. Taylor's voice, shrill with indignation, demanding answers. Ridge's voice, firm but uncertain, trying to calm her. And somewhere, faint but unmistakable, the lilting tones of Brooke, battling tears and determination in equal measure. Finn closed his eyes and remembered the first time he had held Taylor's hand, had looked into her eyes and promised her that he would always protect her. He recalled the laughter they had shared in the Forrester mansion garden, the whispered dreams of a future built on honesty and respect. And he thought of the oath he had sworn as a doctor. To do no harm, to uphold the sanctity of truth, to heal rather than deceive. A single breath escaped him, and he knew what he had to do. But beneath his resolution lurked fear. Fear of Eric's wrath, fear of being expelled from the only world he had ever truly known, fear of the collapse of Forrester Creations if the deceit were exposed. With trembling hands, he opened a new document and began to type an email to Taylor. "You need to see these files. I'm sorry. I never meant to lie to you." Simultaneously, he clicked on the folder labeled Eric's Medical Records, Revised Draft, preparing to delete it forever. In that moment, the entire Forrester empire teetered on the edge of an abyss. In the hospital suite, Taylor tried once more to wrest the truth from Eric. "If you won't show me the records," she said, voice low but fierce, "then I'll find someone who will." Ridge, seeing the desperation in her eyes, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Taylor, please," he pleaded. "This is what my father wants." "And what do you want, Ridge?" Taylor's glare cut through him like glass. "Do you want to marry Brooke because you love her, or because you think it's your duty to a dying man?" Ridge swallowed hard. He looked to Eric, who lay perfectly still, eyes closed, breathing slow and measured. Then he looked back at Taylor, and in that instant, the falseness of his vow shone clear. He turned away from Taylor to face Brooke, whose hopeful expression faltered as she saw the conflict etched across Ridge's face. "You're okay," Ridge stammered, as if tasting the name through clenched teeth. Brooke reached out, but he withdrew. "I need a moment." He strode out into the hallway, leaving Brooke standing beneath the soft glow of the chandelier, white silk of her gown gleaming like a lily in bloom, waiting for a sign from the man she loved. Taylor followed, intercepting Ridge just outside Eric's door. "Talk to me. Please." Ridge looked at her, anguish and regret warring in his features. "Taylor, but he could say no more." In the hush, a single beep echoed from within the room. Taylor's eyes flicked back to the door, and in that instant she knew the records were false. Back in the makeshift office, Finn finished his email, heart pounding. He attached 2 files, one authentic, one doctored. He typed, "Compare them yourself." Then he hesitated, thumb poised over the send button. A soft cough behind him made him spin around. Eric Forrester stood in the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, leaning on a cane yet still as commanding as any king surveying his realm. "Making progress, Doctor?" Eric intoned, his voice a velvet threat. Finn swallowed, guilt and defiance jostling in his chest. He stammered, but words failed him. "I was just about to finalize the reports," he said instead, forcing calm into his tone. Eric's gaze bore into him. "Excellent. Remember, the future of Forrester Creations depends on it." He swept past Finn and disappeared into the hospital suite. Finn exhaled slowly. He looked at the email on the screen and closed the window. He opened a fresh draft to Eric. "I'm sorry. I can't do this." His finger hovered once more over the send button. In the hallway, voices rose again. Taylor's urgent whisper to Ridge, Brooke's soft sobs, the click of heels as nurses hurried down the corridor. Eternity pressed upon Finn's shoulders. He clicked send, and the email shot into the digital ether. Then he dashed to Eric's suite, heart hammering like a war drum. Inside, he found Taylor leaning over her father's chart, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes. She looked up at Finn, surprise and hope mingling in her gaze. Finn held out the flash drive containing the unaltered medical records. Taylor's breath caught. Ridge entered behind Finn, drawn by the sight of truth laid bare. Brooke followed, drawn by the same. For a moment, Silence reigned. Then Taylor plugged the drive into the computer, opened the files, and read. Eric's real prognosis: stable, recovering, with no threat of imminent death. A gasp escaped Brooke's lips. Ridge's face drained of color. He stepped forward, eyes never leaving Taylor's. I'm sorry, he whispered to Brooke, who turned away, anguish racking her body. Taylor moved to Ridge's side, placing her hand in his. Ridge looked at Eric's bedside, at the man who had manipulated them all. Anger flared in his chest, hot and fierce. You lied to us, he said quietly, but with enough force to shake the walls. Eric watched them from his bed, unmoving. A single tear glistened on his cheek as he realized the cost of his deception. Trust shattered, love wounded, loyalties torn. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Ridge turned his back on Brooke, moved to Taylor, and held her close. Brooke, tears streaming freely now, turned and fled down the corridor, her scream echoing like a dirge. Finn stood at the threshold, numb with relief and grief, as Taylor pressed the drive to her chest and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the city hummed with life, unaware of the drama that had just unfolded within these walls, the drama of love, loyalty, deceit, and redemption. And somewhere deep in the heart of Forrester Creations, amid the shards of betrayal, a glimmer of hope remained. The truth, once revealed, had the power to heal. In the tense hush that settled over the Forrester Hospital suite after the truth of Eric's ailing condition was laid bare, another, darker secret lurked just beyond the flickering fluorescent lights: Finn's clandestine care of Sheila Carter, the woman who'd once betrayed them all. Finn pressed a trembling hand to his chest as the remnants of his courage wavered. He could almost hear Eric's low, menacing voice echoing in his mind, warning him that if this secret ever saw daylight, he would destroy Finn's marriage to Steffi and strip him of every ounce of respect he'd earned in the Hayes family. Sheila had come to the clinic under an alias, her injury severe, her identity carefully concealed. Only Finn's deft surgical skill and his heart, which refused to abandon even the most notorious criminal, had saved her life. He'd treated her wounds, soothed her fevered brow, kept her condition hidden from prying colleagues, all because he believed in mercy, in the sanctity of medicine. But in doing so, he had unwittingly given Sheila leverage and given Eric another weapon. Now, as Ridge turned his back on Brooke and returned to Taylor's side, Finn's mind spun with dread. If Taylor discovered that he'd been harboring Sheila in a back corridor, treating her in secret, she would see him as nothing but a liar. Steffi, with whom he'd built a fragile sanctuary of trust and love, would feel betrayed beyond forgiveness. The very thought of his wife's tear-streaked face, her voice trembling as she demanded to know why he'd kept such a monstrous secret from her, tightened Finn's throat like a vice. Finn forced his shoulders to straighten, reminding himself that the email he'd just sent to Taylor would guarantee at least one person knew the truth about Eric's condition. But that honesty could unravel his marriage if Taylor's investigation touched on Sheila's presence in the same hospital where they'd wed. He clenched his fists, aware that Ridge and Taylor's gaze was on him, their silent question lingering in the air. Finn nodded curtly and stepped back from the computer, his mind already racing through excuses and cover stories. I have to check on a patient, he stammered, voice barely above a whisper, and turned on his heel, nearly colliding with a startled nurse who dashed into the room. He fled down the corridor, the memory of Sheila's pale face flashing before his eyes. He found a quiet supply closet, shut the door behind him, and slid to the floor, head in hands. If Eric discovered that Taylor now knew the truth about his false prognosis, the old man would come for Finn again, this time brandishing the threat of familial exile. Finn's breaths came in ragged gasps as he weighed his options. Reveal the Sheila secret and risk losing Steffi? Or keep silent and live under the constant fear of Eric's wrath? Meanwhile, back in the suite, Eric's victory over his own demise hung in the air like a guillotine's blade. Though he lay propped on pillows, watching the scattered assembly of Ridge, Taylor, and Brooke, he was already formulating his next move. He had seen the fear flicker across Finn's face the moment he overheard Taylor demanding the records. He knew of the young doctor's compassion for Sheila and of Sheila's boundless capacity for vengeance. Over the years, Eric had learned that a threat against one's love was the most potent form of control. If he whispered to Steffi that Finn had harbored a cold-blooded killer, she would withdraw her trust, perhaps even file for divorce before the ink on their vows could dry. And once Finn was alone, stripped of his anchor in the Hayes clan, he would be malleable again, willing to do Eric's bidding without question. That evening, after Ridge and Taylor returned to the mansion, Ridge determined to repair the breach with Taylor, Taylor resolute in uncovering every hidden truth. Finn slipped away from the hospital under cover of darkness. He headed to the Forrester estate's secluded guest wing, where Sheila waited, her body still weak but her mind sharp as a razor. She sat upright on a narrow sofa, legs crossed, arms folded, her red hair a vivid blaze in the lamplit room. "You fixed me," she said, each word dripping with calculated gratitude. "You saved my life." Finn swallowed. "I did my duty," he said, voice hollow. "You owe me nothing." Sheila's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. "Merely my life?" "No, doctor, you owe me far more." She leaned forward. "You have built a life with Steffi Hayes, forged a bond with Taylor that runs deep. You have everything, Finn, while I have nothing but pain." Finn's heart thundered. "I can't help you," he whispered. Sheila stood and crossed to him, her proximity overwhelming. "But you already have helped me," she breathed. "By keeping me alive, you have made me useful. Now, Finn, you will do as I ask." She placed a manicured fingertip against his lips. "Or your precious life with Steffi and Taylor will be forfeit." In the days that followed, Finn became a man divided in two. By daylight, he played the devoted husband at the Hayes Gallery opening, offering Steffi the affectionate smiles and gentle touches she craved. He laughed at her jokes, listened with feigned attentiveness as she spoke of their future, of a family, of the possibility of a second child. At night, however, he tiptoed through the corridors of Forrester Creations to Sheila's hidden infirmary, administering medications, changing bandages, all the while acutely aware that every moment he spent away from Steffi risked exposing his duplicity. Steffi noticed. A flicker of suspicion crossed her brow when Finn flinched at the mention of the hospital, when his phone buzzed in his pocket with a cryptic text message, "It's time." Just before he excused himself from a dinner party to take a call. She broached the subject once softly as they lay in bed. "Finn, darling, is something wrong? You've been distant." Finn's throat tightened. He kissed her forehead. "Nothing's wrong," he insisted. "Just a lot on my mind with work." But Steffi's eyes clouded with worry. "You can tell me anything." He swallowed back the truth, nodded, and pressed his lips to her temple, feeling the warmth of her body, the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest. Guilt gnawed at him like acid. Meanwhile, Taylor pursued her own investigation. Armed with the unaltered medical records, she confronted Eric again, this time in Forrester Creations' wood-paneled boardroom. "How could you do this to Ridge, to Brooke, to me?" she demanded, voice trembling with righteous fury. Eric studied her coolly. "I did it for the company, Taylor, for the legacy." She slammed her fist on the table. "You used my trust, my son's love, to play puppet master. And where does that leave Finn? He risked everything telling me the truth." Eric's eyes flickered. He knew of Finn's care for Sheila through his network of loyal aides. He closed his eyes, drawing on his reserves of gravitas. "Your precious Finn has loyalties of his own," he said quietly. Taylor's gaze narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Eric opened his eyes and fixed her with a calculating stare. "He saved a woman few of us would deign to rescue. And if the world learns that he tended to Sheila Carter, that secret alone could ruin him with Steffi. Taylor's breath caught, realization dawning. He never told me. Eric inclined his head. He protects you, both of you. But he also protects his own future. Taylor's heart thundered. She pictured Finn's gentle kindness, his fierce devotion to her and Hayes. She pictured Steffi's trust, her love. And she understood that Finn was trapped between two monsters, Eric's power and Sheila's vengeance. A terrible decision loomed. Would she expose Finn's secret and save her sister-in-law from betrayal, even if it destroyed the man she loved? Or would she keep his secret, colluding with the man who'd manipulated them all, in order to preserve Finn's marriage and perhaps the fragile stability of the family? In the silent aftermath, Taylor pressed her fingertips together, eyes glistening. Eric watched her with inscrutable calm. Somewhere deep within the Forrester empire, the gears of power shifted once more. Friendships fractured. Marriages trembled on the brink. And in the eye of the storm stood Dr. John Finnegan, a man whose greatest surgery yet lay ahead, the extraction of his own soul from the malignant malign forces he'd unwittingly unleashed.